So I'm going to get us started. So to get us going as a way of introduction and lead into tonight's hearing, my name is Carl Granrath. I'm the hearing examiner for tonight's applications or application. The purpose of tonight's hearing is twofold. Primarily, it's for me to conduct this hearing in which I will receive testimony and other evidence that will be put into our official record for this application. And from that, including all the materials that have been submitted thus far, I will make a recommendation to your county commissioners. So just as a way to reiterate that, I am not the final decision maker in this. I will compile my report from this and give that recommendation to your county commissioners, and this will be put in front of them for the final decision on this. So with that, if you do wish to give testimony, and I think most people have complied with this, but for anyone who may be online, there is an opportunity for public comment. I do have a few application sheets here, and I will make sure that everyone who's signed up has their opportunity for testimony, as well as anyone who may be connected on Zoom. I'll give them that opportunity when the right time occurs. So just a quick procedure, we'll have the staff introduce the application. And then the applicant will present their application, arguments in favor of their application. And from there, then we'll get into our public testimony, those who may support it, and those who may be neutral or against. And we'll get there when we get there. And just as a heads up also that members of the public are limited to 5 minutes per person. And then after public testimony, there's an opportunity for the applicant to rebut or provide additional testimony to deal with any issues or anything else they would like to present as rebuttal. So with that, I will let us get started and kick it over to staff to present this application. Ms. Hilland.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Amy Hilland, planner for Kootenai County for the record. The proposal before you today is to establish a mini storage facility as well as a boat and RV storage area. The project site is located on Old Highway 95, south of the city of Athol and northwest of the Silverwood Theme Park area. The zoning for the parcel is rural. To establish a mini storage facility, you have to have a conditional use permit, which is why we're here today. But as you can see from the zoning map, this parcel is within close proximity to commercially zoned property. That area is actually owned by Silverwood Incorporated, but also located just east of the parcel, there's the 72-acre parcel here. Kootenai County did permit or issue a conditional use permit for a log home manufacturing facility, which is still in operation today. According to the comprehensive plan, the purple that you see, that's the transitional land use designation, and it's for the city of Athol. And according to the comprehensive plan, this area is described as 1,000 feet area within the city of Athol's boundary. It enables the city to plan for future growth, and it is expected to limit development in preparation for that annexation. And as no surprise, it's also within the area of city impact for the city of Athol. We did, as per our ACI agreement, did reach out to the city of Athol, and they specifically stated they don't have any comment regarding the proposal. We do rely on them to tell us any issues they might have within the ACI and our transitional zone. The subject parcel is developed with a driveway off Old Highway 95 and has a 30 by 60 foot pole structure. And as you can see from the aerial maps and the photos provided by the applicant, it's heavily vegetated with mature vegetation, specifically evergreens. And a viewpoint from Old Highway 95, you get an idea of the vegetation along the road frontage. The overall proposal, they're proposing 16 storage unit buildings divided into 468 individual storage units. They also have an area to have open storage for recreational vehicles and boats, which is allowed through the mini storage facility process. There's a breakdown table included on the site plan, just gives you an overall, the size of these different storage units, the quantity, and the total square footage. And they're showing 130 square feet of building area. It is expected or proposed at this time to be an unmanned facility, so no office building, no restrooms, no water or wells at this time. They are proposing security measures, not just fencing, but lighting and cameras and an entry-exit gate. Customers will have to reserve units online. They'll be given a passcode to enter the facility. The applicant has also limited hours of operation to Monday through Saturday, 9 to 5. And they have also proposed to preserve 20 feet of that natural vegetation, that dense vegetation that you saw in those photographs along the property lines. I forgot to mention, east of the parcel, there's a railroad. It's the, I believe, Spokane International Railroad. They would request that retain only 5 feet along that railroad area. So if we look at the site plan, so just so you know, the reference north is to the right, so it's just flipped. So Old Highway 95 is to the west, and there's the main entrance. We'll continue off Old Highway 95, yeah. And the green that you see is that vegetative buffer, 20 feet wide. Per our land use code for commercial uses, we do require at a minimum of 15 feet of vegetative buffer and 50% screening along property boundaries that border residential zones. So there is a residential zone, to the south and to the north. So we will require additional vegetation on the north side as well, where you see the RV and boat storage. There appears to be ample room for that, for this site plan. So I just want to point that out. And that is directly from our land use code, the 15-foot buffer. There's also a road frontage buffer of 15 feet. Again, they're showing 20. When we get the actual site plan, of course, the highway district might require some spacings for site viewing, being able to for site entering and exiting. In our land use code for landscaping, there is an option for the applicant to propose an alternative method of compliance, and I'm specifically talking about that 5-foot buffer to the south. Staff has, based on our analysis, say that this will likely be okay because it is a railroad. There's no houses there. But again, we can review that with the building permit stage. Now, there's this area in the peach color that you see. During our review, Lakes Highway District plans to put an overpass in this area or a connector to connect Parks Road east of the parcel and directly connect to Old Highway 95. The applicant has preserved an area for that. But as note right now, the whole facility will be accessed through that main access and do an internal access throughout the site. Only when that overpass is put in, the applicant would like to ask Lakes Highway District for a secondary access so they can still reach that RV and boat storage area. Of course, Lakes Highway District couldn't really comment on that because we don't know the overall design of the overpass at this time, but if Lakes Highway District does not allow a second access, that RV boat storage will have to be moved or removed because it can't be accessed. Here's a overall summary of the comments that we received from agencies. Two of the ones I want to focus on are Lakes Highway District and the Timberlake Fire District requirements. In addition to that overpass, and I actually have a slide that will show you what Lakes has given us, but Lakes will also require trip generation and distribution analysis at time of permit review. To understand the commercial approach that they might permit onto Old Highway 95. For the fire district, as stated previously, there will be no well, domestic water, or wastewater like septic and drain fields. But we do need to worry about fire suppression. The fire district will require a water system, specifically in the form of a pond. There's a minimum of 60,000 gallons in all infrastructure like a fire pump and hydrants. And they will review this in more detail when they actually have a set of building plans with the permit. Our own building code also has fire suppression measures. They require sprinklers for a 12,000 square foot structure, but there is an alternative, and that's with firewalls. And this is from our building, one of our building officials helped with these options here. Of course, the owner is responsible for keeping the pond full winter and summer. That's from the fire district. And the applicant has proposed that water be trucked in. Here, we did a public records request actually with Lakes Highway District, and this is what they gave us. So again, it's north is to your right. And they're trying to connect, they would like to connect Parks Road directly to Old Highway 95. So we don't really know the full design yet. During the public comment, we received 5 comments, and I just checked before coming to this meeting, it's still at 5. They had concerns over increased traffic on Old Highway 95, compatibility with the neighborhood, question if this is appropriate zoning, security, and the overpass. They said highway project, I'm assuming it was the overpass by lakes, and any pollutants over the aquifer. Through our staff analysis, we do feel that all the performance standards specifically for a mini storage facility have been met. The applicant has offered more security measures, which is always a good thing. Hours of operation help with security as well. I would say hours of operation may even help with the traffic because it's not a 24-hour operation. Of course, we will require that the fire system be installed prior to the first certificate of occupancy on site. And of course, there's the internal, I already spoke about that secondary access. We will enforce our landscaping requirements, and we will also require that a design professional plan be submitted for the site disturbance permit. It's actually required for all our commercial uses, and that will also help with your stormwater, your runoff, any planning for dust, best management practices. That is all captured in the site disturbance permit. And so we do, as far as compatibility, it is located on a public road, and it's close proximity to commercially zoned property as well as commercial use. So we do feel it is compatible with this area, and we do feel that landscaping will aid in it borders residential properties. So for staff's opinion, we are recommending approval. And I stand for any questions you have.
Thank you for your presentation. Yeah, there's a couple areas I want to drill down a little deeper, get some more thorough information for our record. I suppose first, maybe you could back up a few slides, but it has to do with the roads and the approaches. If we go back a couple more, just so I get the terminology right for our record, one or two more. Okay, that might be too far.
Okay.
Basically, I just want you to describe a little more about what the process may be like for them to receive their approach permit, doing the trip generation analysis, or that requirement that will be imposed upon them.
Sure, I'll come from the stance of where we come into play. Old Highway 95 is within the maintenance jurisdiction of Lakes Highway District. They are the ones who do issue that approach permit, and they do base it on the trip generation analysis that they receive. So we'll include them at time of either site disturbance permit, actually both site disturbance permit and building permit, and we won't issue those until the Highway District has signed off. I guess that's the best I can answer, as that is our role for any approach permits.
Okay, so one of the requirements, and maybe we can skip. I think it's after this.
It's after.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Keep going
I wonder if it's
forward.
here.
That one, overpass and trip generation distribution analysis. So I guess just, again, so we have a thorough record and especially for members of the public who are quite reasonably concerned about the increased traffic
Yeah.
on this pretty narrow, not wide shoulder road, what that might mean for this project.
Sure, go ahead, David.
Mr. Callahan, sir.
This sort of analysis allows Lakes Highway to determine if there will need to be acceleration or deceleration lanes or anything like that as part of this sort of development. But they won't know until they see the trip analysis and whether traffic actually warrants it. But that's the sort of thing that if anything comes out of the trip analysis that's problematic, then Lakes can step in and ask for things to mitigate those problems.
So hypothetically, this is a pretty large facility. If they determine there's expected to be a large number of trips, they could require a turn lane,
Yes.
a acceleration, deceleration lane, to help alleviate concerns with people coming in and out.
Or ride in, ride out, those kinds of things.
And that's to be determined at a later time by the highway district.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I suppose another area I just want to walk through a little bit for some of the requirements, and just specifically the criteria for open space within your code. And I guess I sort of have my conclusion, what I came to in reading the code, but I want to get your input as well. Basically the requirement is that 65% of the parcel be left to quote-unquote open space. And I guess just, again, for the record, how you read the code, what the requirement for that is, or the definition, I think, and how that applies here.
Sure. It can be, I understand confusion. So we go off the square footage of an actual structure, taking away from that open space. We don't count any asphalt or cement, taking away from that open space. It can be confusing. So essentially, and I did the math, I don't actually have it here right now in my staff analysis, but I actually did run that square footage, the 171,230, I believe. I did divide that by the total acreage of the parcel and did determine that they meet that requirement. I don't remember the exact numbers.
No, yeah, I did see that in your report.
Okay.
I guess, I do see open space defined in your code as including driveways and roads. And then, of course, the requirement specifically for this is open space free from structures. So just want to make sure I'm coming to the correct conclusion that open spaces, that requirement is really just a building, area of lot, building envelope, or whatever the right term is here for that.
Mr. Granrath, the easier way to think of it, and what most municipalities call this, is floor area coverage.
That's what I was looking for. Okay. Even though your code does use the term open space.
It's the same as floor area coverage in this particular case.
Thank you, Mr. Callahan and Ms. Ellington. And I guess the last question I have, and I know you already touched on this, but again, I want to be thorough because I think this is maybe one of the hinge points on this, is the criteria for whether or not this is compatible with existing homes, businesses, and neighborhoods, and with the natural characteristics of the area. So I'd like you to comment on that criteria specifically, please.
Sure. I think one of the biggest things is we have that logging facility to the east, and even though the commercial zoned right now are not developed, so it is hard to get an overall picture of what could happen. But I will say that these type of uses we typically see on public roads, and it just seems like it would be compatible with the area. We do see the area of Silverwood slowly becoming a more of a commercial district. I guess that's about all I can comment on that right now, but And like I said, these type of uses, when they're adjacent to rural zone, we are going to enforce that landscaping, and we are going to make sure it's completely shielded and screened. So that helps with the mitigation. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
I reserve the right to call you back up if I have
Yeah,
more questions, but
of
thank you
course.
for your presentation and the answers to my questions. All right, I will move on to the applicant for their presentation of their application.
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. Ms. Hillard, thank you. Just a quick thank you to her and her staff. They've been thorough and timely and at times patient with this process, and we're grateful for them. Thanks for the opportunity to be here tonight. We had some very major goals when we designed this facility. I'm a rural Idahoan, so things like protecting the aquifer and protecting the rural nature and the rural feel of an area are very important to us. According to our site plan, and I'll just cover a couple of basic items like general layout and design, access and security. We want to talk about that natural buffer, but actually I want to talk about that first. When people drive down Old Highway 95, you get a feel of this rural area, and we don't want that to change. There's very thick vegetation, and so we intend along Old Highway 95 to maintain 25 feet of that natural vegetation. It's thick enough it can't be seen through. Again, we want to maintain that feel. We also care greatly about the experiences of our neighbors, and we've added a couple of things into our site plan. For example, the buffer, according to the code, next to residential areas is 15 feet. We wanted to go above and beyond that because, again, we care about their experience as a neighbor. We want them to have the same rural feel they have now. And so we want to maintain that natural buffer so that they can't see our facility. It's shielded from them. We also want to provide industry-leading security on this property for a couple different reasons. Of course, for the safety and security of our tenants and patrons, but also for the security of those who live close. Again, it means a great deal to us to make sure that their experiences are a positive one with this facility. And so just starting with the general layout and design, this is our initial proposal. We're expecting 171,230 square feet of total floor space. However, this is a conceptual site plan. We would love to have a little bit of flexibility there depending on the final design. Of course, the final design will fully comply with all building codes. And Amy did explain to me that at the time of building permits, it sounds like there is flexibility for minor modifications, both to the design as well as the total square footage of those buildings, as long as it meets all necessary and required codes, which we'll do that. We do also intend to build this in a phased development. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is the overpass, the public works project that will come through the middle of our property. One of the Lakes Highway District comments was that they simply wish to continue working hand in hand, our engineer with theirs, so that we can make sure that the two projects are compatible with each other, which we intend to do. So we intend to develop the areas away from that overpass first, giving some leeway just in case final designs change, because we want to be, again, we want to be good stewards of that land and allow them the necessary space that they need to do that. We believe that public works project will be a great asset to this area, connecting roads that were previously kind of tough to get to. We also believe that that public works project makes the site location ideal for development. It will have a major overpass that runs right through the property that will increase frontage and view of that property. If I were a homeowner and had a home right in the middle of that property, I wouldn't necessarily want to look at a 30-foot overpass in my backyard. And so we felt like this was a very appropriate use of that land. One thing that I did want to mention, according to our general layout and design as well as our business hours, we don't intend for patrons to only have access to lease spots just online. There is certainly a demographic that doesn't necessarily bode well to that. We will have a local phone number where people can speak to a live representative who will be able to walk people through the availability, pricing, terms, etc. That will operate from 9 to 5 Monday through Saturday. But we do intend, and this is congruent with most storage facilities, we do intend to allow access to paid patrons with proper security codes 24/7. And that is simply because that's industry standard, and we feel like it'll be a detriment to the patrons if we limit their access during that time. I apologize for the miscommunication potentially there, Amy, so thank you for that. Access and security will be, in fact, let me go back here. Our main gate will have a secured access code. Individual codes will be given to each patron. Modern technology with storage facilities that are built to a demographic of, I guess, a changing demographic, use things like telephone apps to be able to use facial recognition software from their phone to grant access to the facility through the app. That is becoming widely used throughout the industry and is known as being one of the most secured ways to allow access to a facility. And so we do intend to allow patrons to access it via their app as well as their individual storage unit. The security security measures will be placed on every single door within the facility. When an applicant approaches the property and wishes to enter, their facial recognition on their phone will allow access to the property, as well as their unit only. Security throughout the rest of the facility will stay armed. That's recognized within the storage industry as the top of the line security by all industry experts. Again, we talked about the natural buffer. I do want to talk about the fire requirements. This is important to us as well. The circle right by the main gate, that is our proposed site to put a 60,000-gallon pond. That pond will hold enough water per the fire district to fight any potential fires on site. They want fire flow for at least an hour to be able to fight those fires, and that provides ample water to be able to do that. In order for that to be usable, summer and winter mitigating factors will be used in that pond, agitators, for example, to make sure that algae growth is at a very minimum, meaning for our neighbors it will not become a stagnant pond that is a health concern, etc. It'll also maintain water flow so that it does not freeze over in the wintertime. The initial filling of that pond will require roughly 20 water trucks to come through. That would be done over the space of several days. It would not generate significant traffic during that time. And then from there, with evaporation, we only expect to have to top that pond off maybe once a month, if that. And so trips of a larger commercial style vehicle would be at a very minimum. Our mix of units, we do propose to have a mix of units ranging from sizes 10 to 15 feet on the low end, up to 14 by 40 to accommodate the larger RVs and boats that are prevalent in our area. Again, this is a conceptual site plan. We intend to have about 468, but in the initial phase, we'll build about half of that. So we do intend to do half the first phase, about half the second phase. We would like a little bit of flexibility in the exact sizing of those phases based on customer demand as well as final design. Lastly, I wanted to comment just briefly on the Public Works project. This is essentially our site plan overlaid over the top of the proposed overpass. That overpass essentially cuts the property, I wouldn't say in half, of course, but goes right through a significant portion of the property. Again, I feel like that bodes well to allowing this property to be developed in this manner, in harmony with the lake's overpass. And then this is generally what the design will look like. Final colors certainly have not been chosen, but they will be of very high quality finish work by reputable contractors in the area. This will roughly be what the design will look like within that facility. And again, we intend to have that exterior buffer be thick enough that this isn't what our neighbors or general traffic sees. We do wish to maintain the feel of that rural area. Scott, would you like me to address anything else? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Zemi.
Right, yeah, just a couple questions for you.
Of course.
So, and actually, I missed your name. Are you Mr. Matheson?
I am. I'm Jason.
Okay. perhaps maybe more out of curiosity, but as far as the Lake Highway District's intended overpass, I didn't notice that there is an existing easement. This is their intention to exercise eminent domain or acquire the portion of this part of your property?
Correct. According to the director, that is what their intention is to use eminent domain to purchase that section of property.
I did see in the existing record, prior communications between you and them, that this is something you've known about for a while and obviously are planning around now.
Correct. Yeah, we found out about this back in, I forget the exact date, probably May, I believe was when we were first informed of the Public Works project.
Okay.
So our engineering team has been intending to be, again, good neighbors with them and work in concert with them.
Okay. And again, I wish there was a highway district representative here that I could ask questions, but as far as the time frame that they intend to do this, are you aware of any of that?
Yeah, I guess, well, let me be more clear. Exact time frame, no. The director informed us that funding for things like the overpass has already taken place, so the funding is in. He expected construction within about 2 years, but did not give, a maximum amount of time. That seems to be their best guesstimate is about 2 years.
Okay. And again, I did see the possibility of a second entrance or approach, and again, just for everyone's benefit who's here, basically that'll go through the same process when you get there to determine what capacity, what size that entrance may or may not be.
Correct.
Okay. So.
Correct. And we have done a fair amount of research on our end. Again, traffic is something that we want to mitigate. Industry standards with facilities like ours generate 0.17 peak trips, and that's based on a square footage amount on these properties. Per those calculations, we would have about 80 peak trips during the day. We're not expecting high traffic coming in and out of this facility at all. Industry standard actually shows very low daily trips per square footage on these facilities. But that will be up to lakes to analyze and issue permits accordingly.
Okay. And then just real quick, as far as the code requirements, it's a 15-foot buffer, but you're saying that you intend to construct approximately a 25-foot vegetation buffer.
25 feet is what we have built into the site plan along Old Highway 95, and we have 20 feet built into the perimeters adjacent to residential properties. And Amy pointed out, and I didn't notice it before, along that northern boundary, we do intend to follow that same thing on the northern boundary, though we missed putting it on the site plan.
Okay.
Again, we care about our neighbors and want their experiences to be good.
As well as, of course, the fencing requirements.
Of course.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And just real quick, let me make sure before I sit you down. All right, I believe I have the other questions satisfied. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Examiner.
We will move to the public comment portion of our hearing tonight. So we'll start with the in favor. I do have Scott MacArthur, who may wish to speak. All right. And so I'm going to start with people who have signed up, and I do see some other members of the public, and I'll give you an opportunity in just a second. But I do have Rochelle Niles, who may wish to speak. And if you would like to, now is your opportunity.
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay. All right, and I do favor people who show up in person, so seeing some members of the public who may be here to comment on this application, if you would like to. Either of you gentlemen who are sitting here who would like to come up and comment, please come on up to the podium.
No comment.
Ma'am? Okay, Mr. Callahan, are there any members of the public on Zoom
Yes,
who
sir.
may wish to speak?
We had, we had a Todd on here, but he's since left the Zoom chat, so no one but staff is on Zoom at the moment.
Okay. Well, I of course did see and review that written comments were received, and they are part of the record and will be part of my consideration in formulating my recommendation. But seeing how there is no public comment, that means you don't get an opportunity to rebut any of that commentary. So, ma'am?
I have a question, though. What is the timeline for the Lakes Department to get back to you about the drip generation analysis?
And for the record, if you would like to answer this, please come up to the microphone and we can get your answer to this question on the record. And that question was for a time frame on the Lakes Highway District and their approvals.
Let me just make sure I understand the question correctly so I can give the appropriate answer.
Sure.
Just a time frame on performing that traffic analysis or issuance of permits?
I think she was asking about their analysis on the traffic and all that, yeah.
Okay. They would begin their analysis upon approval by this board and by the county commissioners. I don't have a time frame on how long that takes to do that analysis. I would imagine several weeks.
Mr. Hearing Examiner?
Yes, sir. Mr.
I can
Collins.
add that there's no limitation on Lakes Highways for their time review. Once they ask for this sort of thing, they can take whatever time frame they think is appropriate to review it and then respond.
Okay. All right. Making sure I'm not closing the hearing before there's anyone else. There's enough time that's passed. So with that, there's no other members of the public who wish to comment, and therefore I believe I will close tonight's public hearing at 6:36 p.m. for CUP 22-0010. I wish you all a good night.